Welcome to today's America Walks webinar titled Paint, Posts, and Planters: How to Advance Road Safety with Traffic Calming Quick Builds. My name's Ian Thomas, TA Lead with America Walks, and running the technology for today's broadcast is my colleague, Communications Manager Madeline McAuliffe. A quick build demonstration project is an effective way to engage the community in the issue of street safety. Whereas a permanent traffic calming project typically involves a long and expensive planning and design process, which can trigger opposition from naysayers, it's often easier to obtain approval for a temporary low-cost installation consisting of paint, posts, and planters. In this webinar, we're going to present case studies from Hartford, Connecticut, and the Flathead Nation in Montana, along with our top 10 tips for successful quick builds. Here are the learning objectives. After completing this webinar, participants will be able to explain why narrow travel lanes and visual friction improve road safety, design a quick build traffic calming project for a high-speed corridor or intersection, request a right-of-way permit and negotiate with local authorities to allow installation, and organize a community participatory and media-friendly installation day. We are pleased to welcome 4 guest speakers today. Violette Haldane is Executive Director with Advocacy to Legacy, a community organization which she co-founded in Hartford to educate individuals, families, and communities on how to advocate for public policy changes that improve lives. Also from Hartford, Natalie Shurtleff serves as AARP Connecticut's Associate State Director for Advocacy and Community Outreach, a role in which she focuses on state, federal, and local policy related to livable communities, healthcare, and long-term services and support. Dr. Samantha Morijo is an enrolled member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes who serves her people as a licensed physical therapist with the Tribal Health Department. Her work integrates Indigenous values and place-based health practices. And Maya Pedersen is an assistant professor in the School of Public and Community Health Sciences at the University of Montana, where her research interests include community-based participatory research approaches to behavioral health. As always, we're very grateful to our sponsors, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and their Active People Healthy Nation campaign, General Motors Corporate Grantmaking, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Davoo Good Foundation, Lime Micromobility, LifeSafer ISA, and Tool Design. And you can support our webinars and other programming if you wish. There's a link to our donations page in the chat stream. If you have a question for our panelists, enter it into the Q&A section, which is also where you can find the closed captioning feature. And please note that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be uploaded to America Walks YouTube channel. Now, we'd like to start by getting a sense of how much experience you all have with quick build demonstration projects. So please respond to this opening live poll by selecting the option which most closely matches your level of experience. So we're asking, how much experience do you have with traffic calming quick builds? And your options are, I've planned and coordinated several projects. I've helped plan and coordinate one or more projects. I've been a volunteer for the implementation of one or more projects. I'm familiar with the concept of traffic calming quick builds. And what's a traffic calming quick build? So Madeline, approximately how many votes are in so far?
We have about 310 of 384.
310 votes in out of 384 participants.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think maybe just give it a few more seconds and then let's close it and see where people are on this level of experience.
All right, we're hovering at about 84%. So I'm going to go ahead and close it if you agree.
Yes, please. Okay, so quite interesting. The vast majority, 62%, familiar with the concept of traffic calming quick builds, but very few have planned and coordinated several projects. Slightly more have helped to plan and coordinate a few projects. A few people have been volunteers during implementation, and very few people are asking that kind of question at the end. So that's great. Everybody is somewhat familiar, um, and a few of you, looks like about somewhere between, yeah, 20 to 30% have been involved. Excellent. That's really helpful. Thanks very much for your participation. Okay. Before introducing our panelists, I want to run through a rapid fire top 10 tips for a successful quick build. First up is site selection. There are a number of factors that go into this decision, but be sure to choose a roadway corridor or intersection where there are existing community concerns about safety. It's very important. And there's not usually any shortage of those locations. It's just a matter of picking the one where you feel there'll be most energy around making some improvements. The more community partners you can engage in planning and implementing the quick build, the better. Concerned residents, neighborhood association leaders, and local business owners will all bring their personal experience and passion to the project. Consider holding a workshop with educational presentations and small group discussions in conjunction with the installation. It's very valuable to perform a speed study before making any changes. This can be done with handheld radar guns or more sophisticated equipment such as radar recording devices or pneumatic tubes. After a quick build has been installed, you can repeat the measurement and see whether the speed curve has been affected. And in my experience, a quick build that narrows down the lane, that changes the sight lines, that adds visual friction, always shifts that speed curve to a lower position, sometimes slightly, sometimes by as much as 5 or 10 miles per hour. The keys to reducing vehicle speeds are geometric design and visual friction. Narrower lanes, sharper corners, colorful crosswalks, and landscaping elements all combine to focus the attention of drivers on the road ahead and make sure they slow down to a safe speed. Yielding compliance at pedestrian crosswalks is much higher when speeds are below 30 miles per hour, close to 100% actually, if somebody is waiting to cross. Not so once you get up to 35 or 40 miles an hour. Typical quick build materials include fast-drying roadway paint, centerline yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk signs, reflective delineator posts, and wooden planters filled with potting soil and flowers. With a project budget of $5,000 to $10,000, you can assemble enough of these components for 4 crosswalks and bulb outs on all corners of an intersection. I try to use locally owned hardware stores and garden nurseries as much as possible, but national chains such as Lowe's, Home Depot, and Uline are sometimes the only options. The permitting process is likely to be the biggest challenge you will face in implementing your quick build project. A few cities have created simple public-facing programs through which a neighborhood association, local nonprofit, or business district can request a right-of-way permit and quickly receive approval for temporary installation. And I generally recommend trying to get this for a period of 3 months. Temporary installation of a specific design that meets certain criteria. Unfortunately, in my experience, and indeed in the experience of the panelists you'll be hearing from in a couple of minutes, it is usually necessary to wrangle with city staff, to work with local organizations, to apply pressure, to get the quick build permitted, and to use your connections with elected officials. In planning your quick build day, it's important to prepare a traffic control plan. And indeed, this may be required as part of your permit. So, for example, when installing a crosswalk on a typical two-lane street, it'll be necessary to close one lane at a time in order to paint the bars on that lane and control single lane traffic in both directions with stop slow signs. A high level of public participation in the installation process will ensure the success of the project. Use social media, e-newsletters, word of mouth, and door hangers so that everyone in the area knows about the events in advance. Create a volunteer orientation so that adults and children can quickly plug into tasks such as setting up signs, painting crosswalk bars, and planting flowers. Put on some live music and provide a free lunch for everyone. And amplify wider awareness of the event with robust media engagement. Reach out to local TV, radio, and print newsrooms ahead of time so they send reporters to the event. Distribute a press release on the day with key talking points to make it easy for them to write the story that you want to see. Hold a live press conference with public officials if possible. And lastly, evaluate the success of your project with a follow-up speed study and community surveys. You will most likely see reduced speeds and strong public support, which can then lead to a permanent traffic calming project and a new way in which the community thinks about designing roads for safety. So here's that full list of top 10 tips. And don't worry if you haven't had time to make notes, as all of today's slideshows, as well as the webinar recording itself, will be available online afterwards. So I am now going to end my screen share and invite Samantha and Maya, if you would like to switch on your cameras and share your screens or your screen and tell us about the Our Voice in Motion pedestrian safety quick build, which you implemented last year.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Maya Pedersen. I'm just getting this screen up. Can everyone see that?
Looks great.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to talk about our project that we have a large project. This is a small piece of a larger project, which I'll describe more about today. And as Ian introduced us both already, I'm just going to go ahead and kick us off, and then Dr. Samantha Morisot will jump in about halfway through. So as Ian mentioned, this project is called Our Voice in Motion, and this is a community-based participatory research project. The letters for that are CBPR, so we might use that throughout our presentation today, in partnership with older adults and elders living on the Flathead Reservation in Montana. And this photo that's on the slide is actually one of the photos that were taken by one of the elders that participated in our project. So I'll just start by saying we were funded on multiple grants. This is part of a university and a tribal health project. So there is kind of a strong health slant to this work, although it is firmly rooted in transportation as a health construct. So we had funding from the DHHS. We also had a National Safety Council grant in collaboration with Dr. Thomas, and Dr. Samantha Morisot was a National Council on Aging Falls Prevention Fellow and did some of this work alongside her fellowship. I also wanted to flash this up on the screen. It's a lot of names. I want to show that this project that we'll talk about today is part of a broader Growing Older, Staying Strong project. And that project is a multi-partner collaborative between the University of Montana and the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes Tribal Health Department. And that overall CBPR partnership is intended to improve the health and well-being of older adults and elders living on the Flathead Reservation. What you can see here is that we have a team of academic, university, and community members, all who contribute to this overall collaborative, as well as who contributed to this specific project. I'm going to start off just by orienting us where the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes have their homeland today. It's the Flathead Reservation in northwestern Montana. And you can see on the left side of the screen here, or I'm sorry, on the right hand of the screen here, this is a map of the reservation. And on the very bottom, you can see where it lies within the state of Montana, this northwestern area. And you will come to know throughout this presentation that Highway 93 runs all the way through the Flathead Reservation. And you can kind of see it on this map here. It runs from south to north through the reservation. It's just a main vein that goes through the reservation. And much of our work and much of the conversation of this project is around Highway 93. And here are some facts around the Flathead Reservation. It's a large reservation. It was established in 1855. And one important thing to know about the Flathead Reservation is that American Indian and Alaska Native residents make up about a quarter of the total population. And within that population, for the Growing Older, Staying Strong project overall, there is a higher percentage of older adults who make up the population of this reservation, as well as a higher percentage of those as compared to the US average of those living with a disability. So I mentioned that we are really rooted in health, but transportation as a construct within health. And so I always like to share this AARP, domains of livability, and think about how we orient thinking about health and promoting community health and really focus on this outdoor spaces and buildings as well as transportation. And this project specifically also includes civic participation, as it was a citizen science project that we used, or a citizen science method that we used to engage community members. So this citizen science method is called the Our Voice method. It's out of Stanford Medical School. And this method is intended to engage communities to identify issues within their own community, as well as identify solutions and take action to resolve those solutions using local ideas, as well as local people to make those changes. With the overall concept that the issues that will be identified, the solutions that will be identified, and ultimately the solutions will all be within kind of the power and the scope of that community and therefore more invested. So I'm going to kind of fly through these 7 steps that comprise the Our Voice method so that we can get to the quick build that we actually ended up doing for this step 6 change. So we'll walk through each of the steps next. Step 1 for this project was engaging with older adults living on the Flathead Reservation who participated in a falls prevention program. So we engaged with these older adults and collected data alongside them across these 6 CSKT locations. And again, you can see this is Highway 93. So all the way from down south in Arlee, all the way to up north in Elmo, each of these sites are community sites alongside Highway 93. So in order to engage these community members and allow them to kind of identify issues that they noticed in their communities, we used the Stanford Discovery Tool mobile app, and we asked them to walk around in their communities and take pictures of things that were related to this prompt. 1, what makes it easier or safer to move around in your daily life? What makes it harder or less safe? And then we also ask this prompt 2, what makes it easier for you and older adults, elders to move around, like walking, biking, or in a wheelchair from place to place in your community? What makes it harder? And participants used their mobile phones and this very simple to use mobile app to take photos in response to these two prompts. They were given 2 weeks for each of the prompts to take photos. And so they walked around, took photos. What we did next was come back together. Oh, I guess so. Here's some data from this discovery session. We ended up gleaning data from 3 communities, 28 community walks, 64 photos with 65 narratives. And there were tags associated with these. We're not going to get too much into the tags. We'd be happy to talk about those in the follow-up questions. So here's some examples of what the data would look like. Here was an image taken by one of the participants. They gave it a smiley face. They could choose either a smiley face or a frowny face when they took an image. So they took this photo, they gave it a smiley face, and they said, we need more safe crosswalks like this. The beauty of this app is that it layers not only the photos, but also a tag, a good or bad, smiley face, frowny face, and also a geo-mapped location. So what we did next with all of those data, we created these large format posters and we printed them out and we brought them around to each of the communities that we had collected data. So we actually brought them to all 6 communities. And within each of those communities, we used a data museum as well as an interpretive focus group to discuss all of the photos that were selected as well as the comments. And you can kind of see on those boards, there are also added sticky notes. So in addition to those folks who went out and took photos, we also brought these to these 6 communities and brought people together, shared a meal, and had this group where folks could additionally add comments to the photos. So we were layering additional community perspectives onto those photos that were taken. So we had 39 participants who took part in that collaborative process across 5 communities. And we also had a community advisory panel that contributed to those comments and additional perspectives as well. Finally, in this step 5, where we activated to make change, we had community forum presentations where we engaged not only local politicians, state politicians, but also the Montana Department of Transportation, CSKT Roads Program, and Tribal Council. And what we did here was shared out findings. We identified community priority areas and identified these near-term projects and long-term goals that could take place that were directly related to this community engagement session. So I'm going to hand the next step, the exciting part, step 6, change, over to my colleague, Dr. Samantha Morajo, to talk about what we did with this community engagement and all of this data and how we made changes in the communities. Take it away, Sam.
Thanks, Maya. Yeah, so once we moved into step 6, which is change, our goal was to take what community members and elders had identified through the Our Voice process and translate that into a visible pedestrian safety project. Our first quick build concept was focused on this intersection in our Lee that had been identified by community members. And we saw an opportunity to improve visibility and pedestrian safety with a community centered traffic calming implementation installation. And so the concept included painted intersection artwork, crosswalk visibility improvements, and design elements connected to not only Salish language, but other cultural elements, including colors and animals. And so you can see the design on the left there. Bison are very important to our tribe. And so there was a bison in the center, and then on the directions where it says Salish West, it wasn't actually going to be the English words. It would have been the Salish word for south or the Salish word for east. And then the colors also hold cultural significance to our seasons. And so we had this very beautiful artwork designed by State Senator Jacinda Morjo. But this first intersection also gave us our biggest lesson, I guess, in quick build work. The barrier that we ran into is, even though we had very clear community buy-in and priority to address this intersection, sometimes jurisdictions and timelines and permits don't line up in the timeline of your project. So we ran into barriers related to the permitting and approval process, and we weren't able to resolve those within the timeline of the project. So rather than losing the opportunity to do a pedestrian safety implementation, we pivoted. Next. So our pivot actually landed in two different intersections in St. Ignatius. The one towards the top of the screen there is behind our St. Ignatius Tribal Health Center at Elders Park Crosswalk. And so we did crosswalk resurfacing and path resurfacing. And then the other one there, site 2 is the Saha Lane intersection close to a cultural site. And so we'll kind of get into both of those if you want to go back. So yeah, the crosswalk at Elders Park, like I said, it's behind our St. Ignatius Tribal Health. And so crossing that road, which is connects to an administrative building. So it's a frequently used road, not only for vehicles, but employees and community members will park in the Tribal Health parking lot and cross that road to go over to Elders Park, where we have a really nice developed walking path, which was actually identified by our community members as with a happy face and improved walkability of our communities. But the path to access it was marked with sad faces and fall risk and poor safety, poor visibility. And so the crosswalk, there was actually a crosswalk there at one point, but it was just really faded. The path that led to the road was really steep. It wasn't maintained. It was just kind of a worn in path in the grass. And so in the wintertime, it was very treacherous, was one of the words used by community members for people to traverse it. And so when we pivoted, Senator Morjo redesigned a different crosswalk idea. And so you can see in that bottom picture, incorporated traditional plants and flowers that held significance to our communities and incorporated that into the bars of the crosswalk. And so we completely repainted the crosswalk, made it high visibility, and then also incorporated the local cultural art. And then our CSKT roads program and our CSKT natural resources division came in with their skid steers and resurfaced the paths on the ground, I guess not the road, but on each side of the road, they resurfaced that. And so made it much easier for people to walk on. You can see the before and after pictures there. So a lot of work was done by, and that was, they, offered like the morning of, they said, we have some time. We hear you're doing this really cool project. We would love to help out. How can we help? And so I told them about the grassy areas on each side of it. And so they came in and laid some gravel and smoothed it out and made it a much safer crossing. And then through Ian's assistance, we learned about the delineator, the posts and the cones and planters. And so we were able to install all of that and turned what was once a very poorly maintained, very low visibility crosswalk into high visibility and beautiful. And we had people coming out to use it while we were still completing it. So it was very well received. Staff members came out to help on their lunch breaks. So that was site 1. And then site 2 was a request by our elders. So just below that yellow circle is, you can kind of see it on the map there. It's marked as the Longhouse. That is a site that we use for a lot of cultural gatherings, including funeral services, and where our Salish Kalispel Culture Committee holds their monthly meetings. And then just to the left of it, and so where Maya's mouse was, down there is our 3 to 5-year-old Head Start building, and then just above that, directly to the left, yep, right there is our early Head Start building. So 0 to 3-year-olds attend that one, and those teachers like to take their students out for walks. They bring them over to the Longhouse for places to play and to interact with the elders. So they wanted us to work on that intersection in the circle to help calm traffic going through there. So it wasn't a 4-way stop, but we had permission to essentially turn it into a 4-way stop. And so through, again, Ian's guidance, we learned about bump outs and we incorporated those. And then so you can see there, we, again, rather than doing the crosswalks in the colors of our Salish round. We did the bump outs in the colors that were culturally significant to us, and based on the directions that they oriented, which this crosswalk or this intersection lined up really nicely with north, south, east, west. So we were fortunate in that design aspect. But again, so Senator Morjo had plans to do additional like animal artwork within these bump outs, but we learned that one day is not quite enough time for such detailed artwork at two different sites. But we had a lot of community members again. So most of the ones you see in the pictures are people, either staff members that followed us over to Site 2 or community members who lived around near Site 2 that came out and asked what we could. And so we called them in and they asked how they could help, and they jumped right in, picking up paintbrushes and doing all that. And so we had tribal council come down and join us for lunch. They basically took part of their day to come do a tour of the site, and we had a food truck available for people who were working on the sites throughout the day. And then we also just asked them to complete these surveys to help us evaluate, how well these quick builds were being received by community members. And so all of it was guided either by community feedback or elder requests. And so this is a nice aerial shot. Dr. Pedersen and I, you can see my car at the top there and Dr. Pedersen on the sidewalk down at the bottom. We really wanted to see a top-down view of this just to have an idea of what it looked like from above and a full picture of it. And so one of the IT guys came down from Pablo, which, if you remember from the map, was a good bit away from St. Ignatius. But he said he would jump in his car and come down with a drone and was able to capture this nice picture for us. And so we have an aerial view of Site 2.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
And this is our final slide here. Just to show, we went through basically these 6 steps of going from engaging the community members to activating these decision-making entities, and then going through this change process of actually conducting these quick builds. And now we're still in the process. We did this last August, and we're still in the process of sharing about this and sharing with communities how potentially they could take these strategies to make changes in other communities on the Flathead Reservation, because we do have data from many other communities beyond St. Ignatius. And so we'd love to continue that work. And then, of course, we'll start over and engage with the additional entities who we feel like would be excellent to partner with as we move forward. And one of those, for example, is a Safe Streets for All proposal that we have submitted through CSKT to continue this work doing planning and demonstration activities. And we'll find out whether that gets funded in the near future, where we'll be able to continue doing this work for the future 5 years. And if it doesn't, we'll find another way to fund it. We have a lot of engaged community members, so we're really excited about that. Finally, just happy to share any of the references here, especially the Our Voice method. And then just thank you for your time and attention. Look forward to talking more about it, and we'll hand it back to Ian.
Thank you so much, Maya and Samantha. What a wonderful presentation. And it is very exciting that you all applied for millions of dollars in road safety improvements. And within that, I think hundreds of thousands for more demonstration projects like the ones that you did in St. Ignatius. So now I'd like to invite Violette and Natalie, if you'd like to switch your cameras on and share your screen and tell us about the Love Lane and Vine Street Community Safety Project.
Violette Haldane, Executive Director of Advocacy to Legacy, and I'm here with Natalie Shurtleff from AARP, and thank you for inviting us to share our story today. I'm going to start off with how this began. So we, Advocacy to Legacy, had started out a walk audit in this community. And as we were walking, we noticed a school where the playground was adjacent to a business parking lot. That parking lot had a lot of activity due to it being a restaurant pickup spot. So the school was right there where the cars were coming and going. That concerned us. So we spoke to the school and asked them how did they address the safety of the children with the parking lot essentially being right next to their playground, right next to the playground. And they told us that the kids understood the safety, the rules of the road, and suggested that we come and walk with them because the kids also do a lot of walking within the city, so they understand the dangers of traffic. So we decided to do a walk audit. We spoke to the kids about what a walk audit was, shared with them what we would like them to look out for, and we did the walk audit. The kids walk about 4 to 5 blocks weekly to a park, which they use as their outdoor classroom. To enter the park, they have to cross a very busy intersection. This intersection has about 43,000 vehicles passing by each week, and 80% of them exceed the 30 miles per hour speed limit. Some of them, we clock speeds at over 60 miles per hour. So for the kids to cross the street, the teachers stand in the middle of the street and stop the traffic by literally putting their hands out for the cars to stop. Once the cars stop, then they tell the kids you can cross the street, and that's how the kids got across the street each time they went to visit the park. So we consider this a very big safety risk to the children and also for the city of Hartford. And we saw this as an opportunity for a quick build to at least find a way to slow down the traffic and hopefully to get a crosswalk added. To protect the students in the short term, we got all of them safety reflector vests, the students and staff, to use on their walk, and also got teachers stop signs that they could use when trying to stop the traffic. So we reached out to AARP for support as they had provided walk audit training for advocacy to legacy prior to that. So I'll turn it over to Natalie to talk about that.
Thank you, Violette. So like Violette shared, we had been doing a series of walk audit trainings in the summer and fall of 2024. And as part of that series, we did some trainings with Ian and one of his partners at America Walks. About how to conduct walk audits, but we built into that series, there was also a training on quick builds. So you can see the picture on the left-hand side of the screen is from that training. And there we had folks just kind of playing around with a aerial map of an intersection and testing out different things that they could build into a quick build installation. Bump outs and traffic circles and painted crosswalks and all of the different things that you can use for a quick build. And so we decided when we were looking at what we were going to do in 2025 that we wanted to build on that training and actually do a quick build installation somewhere in the city of Hartford. And so we were evaluating different options throughout the city, and I reached out to Violette, and this was around the same time that, right after she had done this walk audit with Community First School. And this really seemed like a prime location to do a quick build project. And so we talked a little more, and we decided that we were going to do this quick build. So as Violette had shared, this is a really busy crossing. So on one side of Vine Street, which is a quite busy road, there is a wonderful community park that has a nature trail that the students at the school use as part of their outdoor education. They helped restore the trail and help maintain it. And then on the other side of this busy street is a neighborhood. That's where the school is. There's also a lot of just members of the community that live in that neighborhood that want to be able to access this park. And as you can see on the left is the Google Maps image of it. There was no crosswalk across Vine Street. There was a kind of old faded crosswalk across Love Lane on the east side of the intersection, but nothing across Vine Street where folks were crossing on a daily basis. And you can kind of see a couple pictures here of what that intersection looked like. I didn't include the video, but I have some videos of, just standing there, and it feels overwhelming with cars speeding by. It's not an easy intersection to cross. But if you live in that community and you live in that neighborhood and you want to get to Keeney Park, it's how you cross. And so folks like these students were doing it on a daily basis. So we decided to do a quick build. And with Ian's help, we put together a kind of design for what we were going to do with a colorful crosswalk and some bulb outs and planters to make it pretty, and presented it to the city of Hartford, who immediately said no. And I think their immediate gut response was, no, we're not going to do this. We continue to gently push and not so gently push, and get more feedback from them. And we heard, they had some changes that they wanted. And so we incorporated some of those changes. They wanted to keep the crosswalk in the street just white. They didn't want the colorful crosswalk, but they said that it would be okay to do paint in the bulb out areas. And they also wanted changes to the shape of the bulb outs to ensure that fire trucks and other emergency vehicles would be able to get through the intersection. But one of the biggest barriers was the fact that there were no curb cuts or sidewalk on the park side of Vine Street. And so the city maintained that they would not be able to install a crosswalk there because there was nowhere for folks to go once they crossed into the park. Although there is a pedestrian path just once you enter the park that is protected. But there's nothing there at that intersection. And so we continue to advocate. Here are a few more of the kind of pictures of what we envisioned for the materials. But as we were getting pushback from the city, one of the most important things to kind of persevere through that was feedback and input from members of the community. So I'm going to pass it back to Violette to talk a little bit about some of the community engagement work that she led up.
Sure, thanks. All of the work got done really because of the community engagement. The first thing we did was went to
Violette, can you just move a little closer to the microphone again? Thank you.
Sorry. The first thing we did was go to some of the community organizations in Connecticut. We have NRC's neighborhood revitalization zones, and they kind of like represent the residents in their community. And we got letters of support from them. We also got residents to sign on. We had community organizations such as churches and businesses also sign on. The parks have committees, and they signed on, and their partners, the park partners, signed on. School administration, teachers, and the students. And we had community organizations commit to assisting us, such as one organization committed to providing planters and the plants, one organization committed to doing the artwork or the design for the artwork that we wanted. So over the course of time, we had 18 organizations. And from the city perspective, we had Public Works, Police, Fire, and Health, Human Services, and Legal also participated in getting this work done. So it was a lot of effort to get this done. And one thing we did was we kept the community informed to keep the momentum going. And so we always gave status updates. And prior to we got community, the students decided what they wanted to see painted. And we also had a community dinner the day before the quick build just to get the community excited and to get a better understanding of what was going to happen that day. So the key is you have to keep everyone informed and get as many partners as you can involved. And I'm going to pass it back to Natalie.
Yeah, and Violette really did an incredible job of keeping all of the different partners engaged and involved, and asking them to sign on to letters and kind of keep the pressure on the city to get this done. There was one kind of inflection point right towards when it was either make or break. Were we going to get it done in the fall or not? And we were on a meeting with the city, and Violette just said, what do you want me to go back to the community and say? Do you want me to tell them that this is happening or not? And we were, that sort of community pressure really helped get this across the finish line. So across the finish line, this was our community build day. We really made a fun event out of it. We had the fire truck come out to do the modeling to make sure that the fire trucks would still be able to get through the intersection safely. And the kids had a lot of fun with the fire truck. We had the city come out and do the installation of the bollards. Like Violette said, we had a partner artist group to help us in painting the designs within the bulb out. And there in the top left picture, on the far right of the top left picture, is the Hartford mayor, who joined us and spoke at the event, and talked about the community work that was able to get this project underway. And you can't quite see in these pictures, but we had music playing, we had lunch for everyone, we had some outdoor games for people to play. Really made it a fun event. So this is what it looked like after we finished in the fall with the designs painted in the bulb outs, the new sidewalk, and the new bollards. And I'm going to hand it back to Violette to talk about the improvements that the city has continued to make this spring.
So we had to do this in two phases. And so you saw the spring phase, and the city committed to doing the sidewalks. And just 2 weeks ago, here's the end result picture of them installing the sidewalks. They did the curb cut, and then they have gone back and put the bollards back. The bollards are there. The planters are now back. They have seeded the area. And another improvement they did was with the sidewalk, there was a bus stop down the street, and they actually extended the sidewalk all the way to the bus stop, so that people who are waiting for the bus now have a place to stand other than in the street or in the dirt. So also one thing just to mention is the traffic has slowed. The higher speeds that people were going, 60, 65 and higher, that has ceased. People are still exceeding the 30-mile-per-hour limit, but the average speed is 33. But so there has been improvement in the speed. It is slowing down the traffic a bit, but more importantly, because of the signage that lets drivers know that there's pedestrian crossing. The school now says that when they are walking and the minute cars see them, they don't even have to be at the curb. The cars automatically stop so they can get across the crosswalk. So this has made a difference for the school, community first school, and for the community in general and all the residents living in that area. Thank you.
And
Great.
then we'll hand it back to you. And
Thanks,
we've
Natalie.
got some time for some questions now.
Yeah, thank you both for that story. And great example here of the push for the temporary quick build project leading to a permanent project. So, Maya and Samantha, if you'd like to put your cameras back on, and we'll move into our panel discussion phase. And there are some great questions coming in from the audience. And I'd love to, if it's okay with you panelists, to extend our webinar by 10 minutes so that we have time to address those questions. I think I'm seeing nods, and obviously we understand if members of the audience have to jump off at the top of the hour, but I want to get through a few ones here. I'd love to start with kind of a quick fire round, and maybe I'll start with you, Maya. What are your key lessons, or what is your key lesson learned from the project?
I think Sam and I have different ones, but I think mine is that, we just need these projects take a lot of time, especially our experiences in a tribal community. And so especially in just making sure that we have time to educate and also gain input and also gain buy-in from tribal council, from the culture committees, which there are 2 culture committees on the Flathead Reservation. And just making sure that there's time and space to invite community members. Sam did a lot of advocacy work to make sure that the tribal health employees had change of duty approved, which meant they could come out and participate and still get paid for at their regular jobs. And so just taking the time and the energy to ensure that there can actually be just as much participation as possible, and then to gain those approvals. It takes time, and it also just takes a lot of effort to make sure you're getting on those schedules, that you're gathering the advocates who are going to be by your side, also presenting, to have the presentations ready, and just to be able to have the adaptability to present to so many different audiences. And myself as an academic and as a non-native person, I think that was really important for me to learn how to step back and to make sure that those who are around me who were advocating for this work were the ones who were speaking, and that they felt prepared and able to share about this work that we were all learning about at the same time. My background is public health, not transportation or engineering. So we did a lot of Googling words and figuring out, I still don't know what those markers in the road are called. Sam knows what they're called, the delineators. So just the time to do all that background work to make sure it happened was really important. And I'll pass it to Sam. She had a different one.
Mine is, I guess, bridges off of Maya's, in that a lot of the advocacy work that I was doing to try and give people the opportunity to participate, I was getting questions from, my supervisors and leadership, and what is a PT, doing in this pedestrian safety project? And for me, it was a really natural connection in thought process of how I ended up in this work, because I was sitting in those appointments with patients, hearing them say, well, yeah, you're asking me to do, increase my walking and things like that, but we don't have safe places to walk. And so it was a very natural jump for me, but then to have to kind of step back and be able to make sure that I was advocating for, tribal health to get into this work and partner with our roads division, and have the support from the top down of involving so many people that are typically, clinic based and things like that, into the transportation world and pedestrian safety. And so, but I guess my biggest takeaway is remembering that, pedestrian safety is a health issue. And so making sure that it's being advocated in spaces that maybe aren't such a natural bridge for other people, was my takeaway for that one.
Thank you, Sam. Natalie, your key takeaway?
I think my key takeaway is really just the community involvement in this project. truly believe we would not have made it happen without all of the different community partners involved, from having Violette's group and the students help identify the need at this intersection, to having the neighborhood associations, the NRZs, buy in, the park, the city officials that we were able to bring along. I think having everyone involved is really how it happened.
Excellent. Overwhelming numbers. Violette, your key takeaway.
I think my key takeaway, other than being flexible, is to develop a relationship with everyone, even those who don't initially support you, because once you have that relationship, you can engage in a conversation and exchange ideas and come to a compromise so that it's a win-win for everyone.
Very nice. So I'm going to go to one of our audience questions, and I'll stay with you, Violette, for this one. How do you get a group together when people are so busy and disengaged?
Um, we were fortunate. The work that my organization does, we do a lot of community engagement. So we are a known face in the community, and so we have a lot of support. But we reach out to all kinds of people, and you'd be surprised at the people that you would not expect to be interested or that would support you to be a supporter. So we just, we use social media, and we make phone calls. We go to the other organizations that we know, and we just ask. And we may not always get all the numbers we want, but we get some people, and then they invite other people. So that's how it grows. And if you deliver something one time, people get excited because then they feel they can be part of the next thing. And so then they become more supportive.
Yeah, you build trust, right? That you can
Yes.
do something.
If
Natalie,
yeah, if I can kind of add on to that, I would say find the movers and shakers in your community. Find your Violette. Find your person who knows everybody, is a trusted member of the community, who has the ability to bring other people along. Violette makes it sound easy, but a lot of it is through her long-term relationships that she has with people and the trust that she's built over years. And so if you don't have that in a community, work with someone who does, and have them bring it along.
great. Oh, I was going to go to Samantha, but she just dropped off, or maybe. Well, Maya, let me go to you anyway. Question
Sure.
about getting engagement when people are busy.
Well, I'm actually going to go back to talking about the change of duty because I think that was really important. Sam was able to advocate in just the fact that the tribes have this opportunity, or tribal health has this opportunity where where the employees of tribal health can gain approval to participate in community events and still get paid the same way they would otherwise. It's harder for clinicians and others, but I think that was a big deal given the proximity of the work we were doing to tribal health and the fact that we were advocating for tribal health to be engaged in this transportation focused work. And so that was a really big deal. My first response, actually, Ian, when you asked this question, was food. We had a food truck. And so I think just giving folks the permission to come and do that work on, as well as part of being part of their workday, as well as having food there. So that's how we got a lot of the council members there. And then, just making sure we sent out the invites, like Violette had mentioned. We included social media, and we had invites for all the community members. So
Great. Okay, so to the heart of the matter now, and this question comes from a municipal traffic engineer in Colorado who wants to know more specific information about the barriers that you encountered that were put up by agencies. Maya, you want to go again? Or are you? It's like Maya has stepped away. So, Violette, tell us more about those barriers.
one of the first barriers that they mentioned was cost. To put in a sidewalk, there was resistance because the curb cuts would have had to be by the drainage, the sewer system. And from an engineering perspective, it was cost prohibitive to move that stuff, et cetera. So that was the first concern that they had. I Natalie, what other big concerns did they have? I remember the cost being one, timing. What else can you remember?
Yeah, I think cost, and I think in a city like Hartford with limited resources, which I mean can apply to a lot of cities, but Hartford really, as a community, doesn't have a lot of resources for projects like this. And so they're always trying to figure out where is the most important places and stuff. Their kind of gut reaction, I think, is just to say no. And so I think overcoming limited resources, the cost, and then in Hartford, the city wanted to do a lot of the work themselves. They weren't used to community engagement on this type of work. And so, for example, they didn't allow us to paint the crosswalk. They had to have city workers do the crosswalk portion of it across the street. They didn't want community members in the street for safety reasons. They wanted city workers to install the bollard posts. And so we were able to kind of continue to work with them to support some of that work. And we ended up covering some of the costs, but having the city do the work to overcome those challenges.
Yeah, and it's ironical that the city sort of insisted in this case in Hartford on doing things at a much higher level of, standards and therefore cost than we wanted. I mean, when we started, there was no crosswalk there at all. There was nothing. There was a curb cut on one corner, but not on the other one. And kids were crossing the road every day to go to their outdoor learning class, and nobody was doing anything about it. We proposed a low-cost intervention, and they didn't want to do it. But then, when they did agree, they said, "Well, it has to be done this much more expensive way." Including putting the curb cut and putting a sidewalk and landing pad and so on the other side, which is great, and it does. I believe it's required for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and so on. But the sad thing is the whole project ended up costing the city about $100,000, whereas we were proposing something that we could have done with our money, with AARP's money, for $10,000. And so the city doesn't have enough money to do $100,000 projects everywhere that they're needed. Let me go to Maya and Sam. You can decide who wants to respond first. But what were the barriers that you encountered with agencies?
Yeah, I'll just start with, Sam had shown the slide, our first attempt for that Arlie crosswalk. And I looked back today at some of the interactions that we had to get that crosswalk started. And, there are a couple of barriers, just the weather in Montana. We really have a short season for quick builds. And then, there are we had some challenges in terms of just getting the work done before the grant funding was going to end. So we had kind of like a hard time when we need to stop spending that grant funding. But we started conversations with the Montana Department of Transportation in June June 2025. And during that time, I looked through many of our conversations, and we were really encouraged to go ahead and start the encroachment permit for the Arlie quick build. And we were in very good, what we thought was very good communication back and forth about what our plans were for that, about what our hopes for the designs, et cetera, were. And we had, we were on track to make this change or to move forward with this project until I think late July, when we finally learned that instead of just this encroachment permit, what we needed was to have had a different permit from the Federal Highway Administration before we even did the encroachment permit. And so from the start, we were just, having a failed effort, although we thought for about a month and a half that we were on the right track. And so part of that might have been learning. Part of that might have just been not asking maybe the right questions or some assumptions. But I think just more of that institutional learning on our behalf, and then also just making sure that we had more time to get it done, so that if we had 6 months, we could have actually submitted that proposal, or we could have submitted that permit to the Federal Highway Administration. And I might be saying the wrong institution, Ian, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
Yeah, so I think that was an issue for us. We just felt like we were moving forward and we were working with MDT, but it didn't end up being the right course of action. And I will say that the tribes, we had presented to CSKT Tribal Council, which is the governing body for the tribes, and they were fully supportive of this. And they were fully supportive when we needed to pivot and do a different project on tribal roads. That's why we ended up moving to tribal roads, because they were fully supportive of us making these changes. And so, that was just a challenge, that the local governance was in full support, but the state governance and the federal governance needed to take more time. Sam, any follow-up from that?
No, I think that was the biggest one. I guess just a minor hiccup after that was once we did move to tribal roads, it was kind of, how do we select which one? Because we did have so much buy-in from our culture committees and our elders and tribal council that, once we moved to tribal roads and it wasn't that specific intersection in our Lee, it opened up a whole list of potential ones. And so we actually, on the back end, Senator Morjo and I, she's my sister, and so we had a lot of late night conversations. We were like, well, if we did this intersection, what could we do with that? And once the culture committee asked us to do that intersection by the Longhouse, also it narrowed it down where we did the Elder Park crosswalk and that intersection for them. So that helped kind of dictate guide us where we were going to go. But yeah, I guess a good barrier, a lot of options once we moved to tribal roads. So.
Great. Somebody asked about access to the Our Voice Discovery tool. Maya, if you could write something up about that, web links and so on. I know there is a cost involved. That was one of the questions, and we'll provide that in the follow-up blog post next week, following up from the webinar. So final question, quick fire round, and then I've got a few wrap-up slides. And I'll start with, let's see, Violette. One piece of advice for anybody attempting to do a project like this.
Make sure it's something that the community wants. It's very difficult to get anything done if it's just your idea and no one else is interested.
Wonderful. Natalie.
I will say find the right partners. Having community buy-in is incredibly helpful, but I also saw some questions coming through about how do you cover the costs, and there are organizations like AARP that have grants available, and so sometimes having the right partners that are able to fund the project can help get it across the finish line as well.
Thank you. Sam?
Having the right partners and having your community buy-in, but also having flexibility in the plan. And so when you do have to pivot, you have a plan B.
Excellent. Flexibility. Yeah. Maya, you can take us home.
Everyone already said mine, so I'm going to say make it fun. Like, these quick builds end up being a really fun time. And my daughter was in here earlier looking at my slides, and she was like, can we paint the sidewalk again? Like, she had a great time participating. So I think just doing our best to make them inclusive, and something that I think Violette mentioned this, or maybe Natalie, that other people, they see and they want to participate in that. They want to contribute, and they see that it's a positive impact, but they also see that these things are fun, planting and painting and sharing meals, coming together. So get the vibes going.
Great way. Thank you, all four of you. Wonderful presentations and a wonderful project. We have a final live poll, and here's the question, and there it is up for the audience. What plans do you have for implementing a traffic calming quick build in your community? So take a look at those four options. And note number three, I need technical assistance to start planning a quick build. And if you would like to reach out to America Walks for that assistance, then just send us an email at ta@americawalks.org. Um, Madeline, how many responses do we have so far?
We have about 60%.
Okay, well, we're over time, so let's go ahead and close it and let's see where people are. So that's great. 15% of you are already doing quick builds. 20% are planning to do one this year, and that'll be the first one. 13% are interested in technical assistance to get going on this. And a little over 50% don't have any definite plans. But I can say these are really effective long-term strategies, step by step, to really improving safe streets. So I want to, once again to thank our sponsors, CDC and their Active People Healthy Nation campaign, General Motors, Robert Wood Johnson, DeVue Good, Lime Micromobility, Lifesaver, and Tool Design. And we have the donate link up in the chat one more time if you'd like to click on that and make a donation. And final slide, our next webinar will be on Tuesday, July 14th, same time as this one, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and it is titled, What Will It Take to Be a Sidewalk Nation? Thank you all very much for being here.